Taft is a generous sponsor of Business as Usual. Since 1885, Taft has maintained a constant focus to provide clients, both large and small, with legal advice and services that meet the highest possible standards. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com, which is what you're looking at here on my screen. We thank Taft for their support. And Bridget, I will let you take it away. I also want, before you launch Taft, I know we've been talking for a little while, but I want our panelists to introduce one another, to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, this is Sherri. Maybe we can, Sherri Knuth. I'm a co-host joining Landon, who is a normal host, illustrious host.
Special guest co-host, Sherri Knuth.
Okay.
There we go.
And I am the MSBA Access Justice Director. I would like to welcome our panelists today, and I don't know, Justice Chutich, you can introduce yourself. I feel like you need no introduction, but
yeah, I think that's right. I'm Margaret Chutich. I sit on the Minnesota Supreme Court, and we'll leave it at that.
And I'm Bridget Gernander. I work for the Minnesota Supreme Court as the Legal Services Grants Manager, which means my job is focusing on legal aid funding and policy statewide.
Hi, I'm Rachel Huey. I'm an attorney at Merchant & Gould here in the Twin Cities. I'm excited to talk to you today about pro bono. I actually see Emily Good, who is probably one of the people who was most foundational in my path towards pro bono as one of our audience members, and she's one of the architects of the program we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, Emily should be sharing her screen instead of me, but in an attempt to have we really could have, out of the people who are attending today, probably 20 of them on this panel. So I feel like a little odd speaking in all of their stead, but I will share my screen now. To show, just so we have the visual of the Lawyer Step Up program for people to see as we go. All right. I'm sorry, I have so many things up on my screen right now between data and websites that I don't have the facilitation questions. I think somebody's going to ask things, right?
Yep, as anything pops up, either Mike or myself or somebody will pipe in.
And just a reminder to folks that, yeah, of course, type your questions into chat or to the Q&A feature. We will forward them on to our panels.
And of course, you can switch the chat to all panelists and attendees if you want to talk about that. Is perfectly fine.
yeah, Bridget, would you like to just give us a little overview of the campaign and explain why this campaign is occurring now?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much for having us today to talk about the Lawyer Step Up for Minnesota campaign. This, as everyone on the call hopefully knows, Minnesota has a long history of dedication to pro bono service. I was saying earlier in the kind of chatting part of the meeting that when I go to national conferences, Minnesota is really seen as a leader in pro bono. The percent of cases closed by pro bono and private attorneys through Judicare is one of the highest in the country. When you look at our legal aid cases closed, historically about a third of those cases closed are closed by private attorneys. So pro bono is just critical to how we provide legal services to low-income people in Minnesota. And this campaign is really just a one-year campaign that tries to build on that momentum that we have in Minnesota to say that we are at a moment in time, as everyone knows, with the pandemic, where legal needs are increasing at the same time that pro bono has been decreasing. And that is a really hard place for pro bono and legal aid programs to find themselves when they have increasing need from the community and don't have pro bono attorneys to match with those people facing legal problems. And so because of the increases around the pandemic, we thought that we would try a one-year campaign that basically takes our existing pro bono delivery system in the state, but has a one-stop shop website so that judges and really judges, because I work for the court system, we're really trying to emphasize that, and Justice Chutich will talk more about that, and others can have one place, instead of saying find your local pro bono program. This website provides a short interview that will connect you with the pro bono program based on answers to questions.
Yeah, so why is the judicial branch particularly involved in this moment? I mean, the MSBA has long promoted pro bono, and would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and actually I'm going to see if Justice Chutich wants to kick that off for us.
Sure. I'm delighted to be here to talk about this program because the judicial branch has always, I think, in the past many years has been a big supporter of the civil legal aid programs and encouraging lawyers to step up and to provide pro bono services. And I think, as Bridget said, as the judiciary, we're kind of reeling from the effects of COVID and seeing the needs in the community that have been created, especially in the housing area, family law, consumer area, as we face the end of eviction moratoriums. We see the case backlogs that the district courts are facing. We thought it was really a great idea for us to have a kind of a call for lawyers to step up, as we've been seeing, frontline workers in other fields, medical workers, teachers, stepping up to doing, more than typical during this really terrible time of virus that has affected so many people in such a hard way. And then we were cognizant, Bridget keeps us aware of the actual decrease in representation, in the number of lawyers who were volunteering for pro bono work, and the decrease in cases closed by private attorneys. So we wanted to be part of an effort. The judicial code tells us that we can do this, that we can encourage lawyers to provide pro bono services. We can, provide a list of available programs. We can train lawyers even. We can participate in events that recognize lawyers. I just can't browbeat you or coerce you or anything like that. But we can we can encourage the bar to step up at this time. And the ABA has said that our participation can increase the acceptance of the pro bono responsibility and increase the acceptance of the idea that pro bono is a necessary component of the delivery of access to justice for Minnesotans. So I think that's, and it's fun. It's fun for us to be able to recognize people who have really stepped up and taken on more than their daily work to help others in need. And for those, I'm sure many of you on the call have already done pro bono work, and the great satisfaction that comes from it. New lawyers benefit a great deal in being able to use skills that maybe they wouldn't be able to in their typical practice for a couple of years. And I always tell people that my favorite experience with my, I love being on the Minnesota Supreme Court, but the case that I remember most is when I helped a Romanian person back in the days of dictatorship of Ceausescu get legal asylum here in the United States. And that was I tell people that that's when I saw the awesome power of the law to change lives for the better. And I was just very blessed to be a part of that. So that's, I think, those are the reasons where the judiciary is very excited about this program. It looks like we've made it really easy for people to get involved. And I'll be really happy to be part of the recognition program.
I'm curious as to, I've taken this step and kind of gone through the process a couple times just to see where I landed, who's recommended based on different results. I will say for me, Volunteer Lawyers Network tends to pop up almost every time, no matter how I put anything in. I think partially because of where I'm located, but trying different locations tends to result in different organizations. But I'm curious how much coordination has been done with those organizations to kind of facilitate bringing on the number of volunteers that hopefully will be showing up.
That's a good question. We in Minnesota have what I call an organic legal services delivery system, programs that around the state have grown up often through connections with local bar associations. You know, VLN going back to the 60s, I believe, because they just had their 50th anniversary, right? And some in the 70s and 80s where local bar associations started local programs. So we have Legal Assistance of Dakota County and Olmsted County that are county specific programs, as well as the regional programs around the state. And so we very much value that local connection rather than having kind of one statewide system like some other states around the country have. And so for this program, because we're trying to make it as easy as possible, we're focused on the primary 1 or 2 legal aid providers based on your geography. So like you said, Landon, geography is probably the biggest piece, as well as as Justice Chutich mentioned, our 3 areas of focus because of the backlog in state courts are housing, family, and consumer. And so depending on where you are in the state and what programs have a focus on that, as well as your training needs, different programs provide different kinds of training and support. When you answer those questions, then you're paired with the primary pro bono provider in the region.
What are the well, and this is more for the pro bono service itself, but for those organizations that may not be showing up where they want to show up, or for those organizations that are not even appearing on the list, how easy is it for another organization that's trying to provide services?
Well, we have really tried to balance the focus of this not being a list of, you know, if you go, for example, to projusticemn.org, that is really our primary directory of pro bono programs statewide. And so if people are looking for a really comprehensive list, particularly for areas outside of housing, family, and consumer, so immigration cases, as Justice Chutich mentioned, her volunteering with the Advocates for Human Rights, projusticemn.org is the perfect place to get the absolute directory of all of the pro bono opportunities. And that's been available for many, many years. What is different about this campaign is it's much more targeted, again, both by case type and by primary program, because we don't want people to feel like when they get 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 opportunities that pop up, then what we've heard from folks is that then feels like a barrier to actually making a connection with those organizations. So because this is a 1-year campaign focused on particular areas of law, it is much more targeted than if you went to projusticemn.org.
Would you be willing to walk us through the site a little, Bridget, so people have an idea how that would play out?
Definitely. So you're seeing the graphics that in the partnership between the MSBA, the courts, and the civil legal aid programs. It was really great. The Bar Association did these nice graphics that the courts do not have, at least I don't have the skills to do. So with the Lawyer Step Up MN. You see it's a pretty clean site with the focus being both the find your pro bono match. So that's the interview that Landon was just mentioning. And then also I think it's important to note for existing volunteers, we also want to be recognizing people who've been doing this already and have maybe been doing it for a long time. If you're volunteering through an existing pro bono program, we will coordinate with them on the recognition side of things. But if you would like to make sure that you're recognized at the end of the year campaign, there's also a part here to sign up for recognition for existing volunteers, so that we can get both the new folks and the existing folks. And the recognition that we're talking about, Justice Chutich mentioned, but we're looking at a Supreme Court event where it will likely be a virtual event in early 2022, where we really try to, for the first time since I've been in this position for, how long have I had my job now? 13 years, to have kind of a statewide pro bono recognition. One of the benefits of Zoom is that it would get rid of some of our geographic barriers for recognizing pro bono folks around the state. And so I think it could be a really fun event, and I'm looking forward to that. But for folks who are new and are trying to connect with the primary pro bono program in their area, they would click on Find a Pro Bono Match. And then we have this type form interview. So it's very conversational, kind of like you're having a text conversation with the computer here. So we're just going to say, let's go. So what best describes your interest? So the first one is pro bono, but make it quick. I'm worried about getting overcommitted. That's going to lead you to more of the advice kind of pro bono services, advice and brief service. Whereas the second question, I'd like to build a relationship with a client or get more experience in this area of law, would connect you with more of the extended representation opportunities. So let's just go with clinics, since that's probably the most common. One of the areas of law that interests you more than others, and again, because of the partnership with the state courts, we're just focused on housing, consumer, and family law. So let's say housing. And have you worked in family, consumer, and housing law? I'm pretty new to these areas. I'd love a training and access to a mentor attorney who can help me do it right. Or I practice in one or more of these areas, but would appreciate some support, but they know the general law and rules. So this really helps direct you to a program that has more training and support if you choose A here. And then this gets to the geography. Where are you located? And rather than do all 87 counties, we tried to group it by different parts of the metro area and then the regions throughout the state. And Hennepin County, primarily Volunteer Lawyers Network, is obviously the biggest provider there. Ramsey and Washington County is the SMERLS program. Olmsted, we mentioned, is a single county program. Anoka County, Dakota, has a single county program. CMLS does most of the central and western. Northeast is LASNM. Northwest is Legal Services of Northwest Minnesota, and then the rest of the SMERLS service area. And then we also have family law opportunities with Tubman and some of the other issue-specific providers around the state as well. Wait, sorry, go ahead. Why am I not seeing where to click? I have to click one of these. Let's say I'm going to be in Northeast Minnesota. And then based on what you told me, it would be LASNM. And then it gives you how you get connected with, in a direct link, in this case, to the volunteer coordinator.
That's fantastic. So it really leads you on a very step-by-step process and gives you just an opportunity to connect with one or two providers. And so I think an important part of this is that to recognize that these providers have ongoing, very robust pro bono service programs, and they can provide resources, training, support, mentorship and help you, even though this may not have been an area of law in which you have practiced, you to transfer your skills to practice in these areas of high need as well on a regular basis, but particularly as a result of the pandemic. And I think sometimes, there's hesitancy to make that leap to another area of law. We as lawyers, we have high standards for ourselves. We want to do things well and correctly. And I know that Rachel is an attorney who has made that leap, and maybe it isn't as big a leap as we think, but it's a transition. And I wondered if you would talk a little about your normal practice and then how you have moved to pro bono and done new things in that arena.
For sure. Well, I'm a commercial litigator. I do complex cases dealing with patents, trademarks, trade secrets, business disputes. And so that's my wheelhouse. That's what I'm comfortable with. And I think of my pro bono journey as being pre-2007 and post-2007, or maybe pre-Emily Good and post-Emily Good. So Emily was at the Advocates for Human Rights, and she had this amazing client who had been unsuccessful both at the IJ and the BIA, the board, and who was going to the Eighth Circuit, which, as anybody knows, when you're in an immigration case and you're going to the Eighth Circuit, it's bad news. And so Emily decided to bring out the big guns, namely her good friend from law school, who is always going to say yes to her when she asks for a favor. So she called me and she said, please help this person. He needs someone to prioritize his case and help him, or he's going to die. Just like Justice Chutich said, these immigration cases are very high stakes. And like I said, I can't say no to Emily. And so I took this case through Advocates, and exactly what Sherri said, the great thing about taking these referral cases is they'll support you. They have sample briefs. They have attorneys who have experience in this area. They can tell you who else in the community is working on these cases. They'll give you training, they'll give you support. And so I squeezed every ounce of support that I could out of the Advocates from Emily and from people they hooked me up with. And that case went on for, I think, 8 years. So that's something else Emily and I joked about. Taking a case through some organizations, it's like having a child. They're going to be with you for a long time. Start saving for college. So I had that case for a very long time. And like Justice Chutich said, it was, to this day, probably still the most fulfilling legal experience of my career. And I've done so much pro bono after that, but that was a very large and impactful moment in my career. So since then, I've taken many cases from the Advocates. I've taken cases at the immigration level. I have an immigration case now that's obviously slow because of the pandemic. I have an Eighth Circuit case right now. And Advocates doesn't just make you take on a case or a client that you'll keep for the rest of your life. You can also do research for them and do kind of discrete memos and issues, but they do a great job with training. So that's an organization that I still work with. And once you get comfortable, it's easy to bring other people in. So I have gotten other people addicted to pro bono, where I bring them in, they work with me, they love it enough that they go and do their own case. And so every time I take on a new pro bono matter that's not bigger than a research project or a drop-in, I grab someone else and I say, hey, let's do pro bono together and see what happens. So that is my experience with Advocates. Like Landon said, VLN is also great. I'm on the board of VLN. I'm the immediate past board chair. So VLN has a very special place in my heart. I also do a lot of volunteering through VLN, even doing the housing court drop-in during the pandemic. You just do it on the phone. VLN is also fantastic about doing training, about giving you the opportunity, like Sherri and Bridget were talking about. You just want to do something quick, do a drop-in. At the end of your drop-in, someone needs more help. Do you want to help them, or do you want to pass it on to someone else? So VLN is a great place to really make a difference. Another place that I work is I do work for Children's Law Center. Children's Law Center is such a great kind of toe dip into pro bono, because you are advocating for a child in foster care. And sometimes, they need someone to sit there in court, advocate for them, and explain to them what's going on, because a lot of times the kids aren't being in the loop. They don't know when their hearings are. They don't know what happens. They don't know what the timing is. And so you don't necessarily need to know everything about juvenile law or family law or state court to be able to really make an impact on that person's life. And sometimes it does involve, motion practice, but then you can ask for help. So if you really want to make an impact on someone's life and have that personal connection, it's more than drop-in. You're going to have a relationship with this child for potentially for a long time. And I'll tell you, I cry like a baby every time one of my clients is adopted. There's never a time when that happens and I'm like, oh, well, moving along. It's such a great experience. So I'm really going to advocate for Children's Law Center for people who think they want to do pro bono, but are intimidated about learning new law, but do want to make a connection with the client. That's a great way to do it. So as I said, I kind of got addicted to doing pro bono after that experience with Emily. And so I'm always looking for new challenges. And so recently I've started looking for ways to get into criminal law. And so I have a case now that I'm working with the Minnesota State Public Defender's Office, which makes me feel kind of fancy because I can now say I'm a special assistant state public defender. But anyway, once again, they provide support for you. And it's a good thing to do if you want to do appeals in particular, because a lot of the cases that they ask for support on are for an appeal. So, some attorneys I know think, I'm good at briefing, I'm good at writing, I don't know about all the other stuff. Well, there's a case for you. So I think that if I can do pro bono, then anyone can do pro bono, because it's what I practice in my day-to-day is very different than the work that I'm doing for my pro bono clients. But the work that I do for my paying clients feeds my family, and the work that I do for my pro bono clients feeds my soul.
And Rachel, thank you. I think one of the things that I'm hearing from most of the panel here, of course, is talking about those meaningful, impactful cases. And absolutely love those. Those give you the nice, warm, feel-good feelings that last for days, weeks, and decades sometimes. My question is, hearing that sometimes feels very overwhelming. Like, oh, it's gonna affect me that much. It's gonna be around that long. As far as breaking into pro bono, I think that can be a little intimidating. One of the questions that came up is there more of a need for limited representation through clinics or extended representation? And I think those, to me, it sounds like the clinics might be a good way to break in and just test the waters.
For sure.
I'm curious on the need.
Yeah, well, and I can speak to that just from VLNs. I know we always have a need for both drop-in and full rep, and particularly full rep in certain areas, like unsurprisingly, bankruptcy is a place where there is real need for full rep. That's at least through, my experience with the VLN board. As it relates to the people listening who are thinking about ways to get involved and are feeling a little intimidated, I think most people toe dip in doing drop-in clinics. That's how I got started doing pro bono. I didn't start by taking a full rep immigration case. I started by doing drop-in clinics with VLN and doing housing law. And it is, you show up, you're there for 2 or 3 hours, it's discreet, and then you're done for the day. And so that's an easy way. A clinic is an easy way. Or like I said, I've done legal research for advocates. So advocates will have some legal memos it needs help with. And you can just, do a 20-hour legal research project. And they're always sending out emails looking for that. So those are discreet and sort of limited. And then, like I said, if you're looking for a longer term relationship with someone, but are intimidated about the sort of legal aspect or learning new area, I think Children's Law Center is a great way to go. And then if you're ready to go in hard, then, you take on a full rep immigration case and you make a best friend. So that's my thinking on it.
Thank you. I noticed we are at the halfway mark, so we're probably ready for the CLE code. But now that we're at that point, I'm going to ask the pro bono unfriendly question. I will say I'm a big fan of pro bono. I do a lot of it myself, really enjoy it, find the value in that. But one of the comments that I hear a lot is, getting attorneys to do pro bono work is essentially like putting a Band-Aid on a severed limb. We need, this is not going to solve the problem. This is not the solution. It may make us feel good, but we got to do something else. So I'm curious, just because there's a lot of questions, what else is being done? What else can we look at? What else is being talked about?
Sure. Well, I can have a suggestion, and then I'd love to hear from other panelists. All the organizations I talked about, they will also take your money. So on top of, the things that we're doing as individuals on our own time to try to make an impact and make a difference, we can also, use some of that money we got from our paying clients to push it over to someone else. But I'd love to hear what other people's thoughts on this are.
Well, that is what I spend my entire job thinking about. to me, it is a very complicated resource puzzle of how to know with the very limited resources that civil legal aid has available, what the right investments are in staff attorneys and pro bono attorneys and Judicare. If people aren't familiar with Judicare, that's another important part of the delivery system. And trying to use all the tools we have in the toolbox, you know, short of having a right to counsel like there is in criminal cases, we really have the job as a profession to do everything possible to challenge ourselves for people who can't afford an attorney in civil cases to have access to justice. And so pro bono is an important part of our system, but I mean, as Rachel said, the resources to pay for staff attorneys are just critical. That is the safety net, is the staff attorneys around the state who are doing this work in offices and serving every county in Minnesota. And then to me, pro bono is how we continue to leverage that expertise around the state. And you know, we have a monopoly on the practice of law. Lawyers, you know, only we can do this. And for people who are facing, you know, shelter, loss of their homes, safety issues, loss of their children, this is really critical to our profession to find some way to do something. And so it's not going to look the same for every lawyer. For some, it will be checks. For some, it will be for volunteering. For some, it will be other kinds of advocacy. For some, it will be all three. But it really, as a profession, there's no getting around this critical issue. And the severed limb analogy sometimes feels very apt. We are turning away you know, almost 50% of the people who come to us who are eligible for services. And so it can feel really overwhelming. And so I really just encourage people to kind of take that, you know, I don't have to solve the whole problem, but I can do something kind of approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the standpoint of the MSBA, we work a lot at the systemic level to try to address needs, how to get more services through paid civil legal service organizations so that paid staff can be effective and help more people, and also pro bono. It's all one piece. I mean, every piece matters. And I am going to go to my starfish story, which no, a person comes up to a child on a beach there's a tide that washed up tons of starfish that are sitting on the beach, and the child is taking one by one and throwing them back into the ocean. And the man says to the child, "Why are you doing this? You're never going to get them all. It doesn't make a difference." And the child says, "It made a difference to that one." So, and I think, you know, people are motivated for pro bono for different reasons. And some of it is the humanitarian piece. Some of it is from a standpoint of, I'm part of this profession. I have an aspirational goal. Some of it is more, I want to get my name out there. I want to do something. Those are all valid reasons. And I often, you know, I don't believe we're going to pro bono our way out of the situation that we're in, but it makes a difference. So,
sure. And Sherri, I just want to throw out one thing we didn't talk about, but for people whose motivation, because I see a lot of the names on here, and these are not people that need encouragement to do pro bono. What they want to know is, what tools can I use to encourage others to use pro bono? And like I said, you know, I do find a friend. I grab people and say, let's do a case together. It'll be fun. A huge part of my recruitment plan when I'm bringing people on in pro bono is, hey, have you ever argued an Eighth Circuit case before? Would you like to? Let's do a pro bono case together. Hey, you've never argued at a hearing before, have you? I know that you really want, you know, an opportunity at that trial that's coming up. Let's get you some experience right now in front of an IJ. And so you know, I've been honored in the community for mentoring, but really I'm just sneaking everyone into pro bono. So everyone says, look at Rachel, she mentors all these attorneys. Nope, she's getting them all to do pro bono. She's just pushing them in, you know, getting them on her hearings and having them. That's one of the reasons I do have so many pro bono cases going on at any given moment. I'm not an island doing it all by myself. I'm bringing in my friends and saying, let's get some experience together. Let's have some fun. But that's, you know, the pitch for pro bono. You know, we say it makes you feel good. You want to get your name out, you want to try something new, you know, you want to help people get experience doing things that they wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to do.
And Rachel reminded me that I forgot to mention the encourage a colleague part of the Lawyer Step Up and then website. One of the reasons that we think, you know, again, what makes this campaign different than our usual pro bono pitches is that we're really just experimenting with this idea of a website that that would be easy to refer people to. And this way it has an encourage a colleague here up in the corner, and you can send a note to a colleague about the campaign. And we really, I mean, I can't think of anything more effective than what Rachel just described as far as reaching out to friends, you know, law school classmates that you might think it was great to work on something together, and look at ways to encourage them to step up as well. So I just wanted to mention that quickly.
Sure. And Bridget, when we're on this topic, I want to throw out, you can also encourage clients to do pro bono. A lot of people who are in-house would love to do pro bono, but they feel like they don't have the resources. They might not have malpractice insurance. And so they're very hesitant and their workflow may be an issue. And you can say, we can team up. We'll pick an organization that has its own malpractice insurance, because a lot of the organizations that we are talking about, if you take a referral through them, their malpractice covers you. So that's not really a concern for most firm lawyers who have independent malpractice insurance that should also cover it, which, you know, depending on your situation. But for in-house attorneys, that can be a big benefit. And so I have pro bono cases right now I'm working on with clients.
And that's probably the number one question I get is about malpractice insurance. I don't know exactly why, but it must be very important to many people. And every one of the programs that would be a referral on the Lawyer Step Up interview all have malpractice insurance for their volunteers. So just to emphasize that.
Yeah, and sometimes that's a concern for emeritus lawyers, and so that's an important facet for them. You know, there's a process by which you can keep up your license and as an emeritus lawyer and provide pro bono legal services, and that's a really important part of for many people of, you know, what they do after their formal retirement from law practice. So I just want to touch on see if we could just have either Rachel or Justice or Bridget or Justice Chutich touch on the new rule that is going to be required for attorneys to report their hours in the preceding year spent on pro bono, and whether or not they've made a financial contribution to an organization that provides legal services to people of limited means. And Justice Chutich was actually the author of the order, so maybe you'd like to speak to that.
Because of that, I think I'll let Bridget talk about it if you don't mind.
Yeah, I would be happy to. In addition to working for the court, I also am on the Access to Justice Committee that recommended the rule change that went through the MSBA, and the MSBA petitioned the court for the rule change. I mean, I think it's important for people to look at the rule in a couple of different ways. You know, we know from other states around the country where pro bono has been required to be reported that there's been you know, part of it is an education campaign about what constitutes pro bono and gets people thinking about it as part of their reporting, and has seen an increase in pro bono service as a result of, you know, kind of that old adage about if you value it, then you measure it kind of approach. And then also states that have reported contributions to civil legal aid organizations have also seen an increase in contributions. And so the court, through this order, it goes into effect in, let's see, January? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Is it for the January 2022 reporting period?
I believe that's right. And there's a period where it is mandatory reporting. On the financial piece, you don't have to report the amount that you've done. It's a yes or no. But there is not an option to decline to answer on either of them. There'll be a form where you'll list your actual pro bono activities and then check yes or no for the financial part. And so I think we put off for, the Bar Association is going to be educating lawyers for at least a year before any consequences would occur from not answering the questions.
Yeah,
And
so
there was a dissent that had a philosophical difference about making what is a aspirational goal, making the reporting of that mandatory. But we felt for the reasons, Bridget has made great reasons for why the court ruled the way it did.
And so just to clarify that a little bit, first of all, it is not public information how many hours you volunteered. And you can completely put a 0 in for the number and that answers the question. The trouble that in one part of my life, I was in charge of the lawyer registration office for a few years. And so I can tell you that what happens is, and this happens right now with the lawyer registration form, sometimes people skip a section. So for example, I'm in charge of the interest on lawyer trust account program at the courts. And as you all know, there's a section of your lawyer registration form that requires you to at least say you're exempt from IOLTA requirements, or if you aren't exempt, to report your trust account information. And that actually gets reported to my office. If you skip that section altogether, if you don't check any of the boxes, if you don't fill anything out, then that form has to get returned to you. And depending on when you submitted your form, if it gets returned to you, there can be enough of a delay that it can impact your license, right? I mean, this is what everyone's worried about, is that if they skip a section and it takes a long time to turn that around, that it could have impacts on your license. So in this case, the court is saying you can't skip the section on pro bono reporting. You can put in a 0 if you haven't done any pro bono, and that's no problem at all. Just put the 0 in, but you can't skip the section the same way you can't skip your malpractice reporting or your IOLTA reporting or the other things that are on the form right now. But what the court has done is given a year. So first of all, it won't start until 2022. And then for all of 2022, there's kind of a grace period where if you skipped the section, nothing would happen. And then in 2023, it will be treated the same way as the IOLTA section or the malpractice reporting section, and you have to fill it out.
Does that, it almost seems like that grace period may set people up to have even more problems the following year, because they anticipated, first year I didn't have any problem by skipping this.
Well, that's part of the educational campaign to make that really clear. I mean, the grace period is honestly for the lawyer registration office, not for the lawyers, because the lawyer registration office, again, as a person who I managed that office for a few years, the phone starts ringing off the hook with lawyers who are concerned about what's happening. And so we're really building it in to give some grace to the lawyer registration office to be able to answer the questions and deal with anybody who is skipping that section of the form. But it's part of the education campaign, I think, to make clear that it's kind of a two-step process as far as the first year versus the second year. And I think both the Bar Association and the courts will be doing a lot of work to try to make that as clear as possible.
One question I had in regards to the Lawyer Step Up website is, I've volunteered at a bunch of different organizations. I've tried to volunteer at others. And sometimes what I see with organizations when I'm attempting to volunteer is maybe the coordinator is busy and they never bother to get back to me, or they say they're going to set up a training program and it doesn't happen, or I'm promised, oh yeah, well, you don't know anything about this area of law. We'll set you up with a mentor, and the mentor never shows, or the mentor is MIA. You know, and so there can be a variety of problems that really put a bad taste in your mouth for volunteering. Now, that being said, I think there's a lot of fantastic organizations, but you never know. And one of the things that I'm seeing on here, although there's a nice little email icon at the very bottom, I'm wondering, is there going to be follow-up? You're collecting these email addresses. Is there going to be follow-up to see if the volunteer experience is actually positive, if things are going well? You know, if the services that you guys are promoting are able to meet the massive influx of volunteers that are going to be coming.
That would be amazing if we have the, I would love the massive influx of volunteers that gets the pro bono programs really excited about this effort. And when they come, we do have follow-up both with the programs initially to double check that the person who came in through the site has followed up. And then we haven't really talked about what you said at, you know, kind of later in the program, following up with the volunteers to check in about their experience. But I think that's a great idea. Really, this whole campaign is something of an experiment to see if a single website is beneficial and brings more volunteers into the system. And so as an experiment, I think we need to do everything we can to kind of get feedback. It's a very flexible website. We can change it based on feedback we get from folks as far as, you know, the messaging or how people, you know, we can improve this or improve that. We're really open to you know, improving it throughout this year of the campaign, as well as trying to get feedback on, okay, once the campaign is over a year from now, what did we learn from kind of the one website approach, and what might we bring forward, you know, into our pro bono coordination beyond this year.
Okay. And for those on the those attendees, feel free to throw your questions in the chat. Q&A.
Oh, and Emily gave the real answer too. So she said, assuming the individual going through the Find Your Match enters their email and name, then we will also pass that form along directly to the coordinator so they can reach out. So that we're kind of doing a belt and suspenders approach to following up with the volunteer.
And I notice as they're going through, and when we're talking about people that are doing current pro bono work, it seems like this lawyer's step up is more than just finding a place to volunteer, but maybe recognition. And I don't think we've talked a whole lot about the recognition side of things. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Well, we mentioned our main recognition approach, which is going to be a large event, remote event with the Supreme Court, kind of a pro bono Zoom gala, for lack of a better term, that will be in early 2022 for participants in the campaign. But we're also trying to think of other ways that, I mean, I find pro bono recognition to be one of the trickier, it's such an art, right? Because there are a lot of people who do this that don't want recognition at all. And there are other people who, you know, might, I think recognition hits different people different ways. So we're really interested in feedback and what other recognition other than the gala might be of interest to folks. One of the things that, gosh, I can't remember the state. It might be Colorado, where the Supreme Court has a badge. And so I was kind of thinking, all right, I'm scrolling. You guys see this, this circle here. This is another one of the graphics that the MSBA put together. And because it's a circle, it seems like it could be turned into you know, we could use it as a badge in different ways. We were thinking, you know, would participants be interested in, you know, using it on their websites? Would participants be interested in, like, I don't know, we've talked about everything from stickers to pins to, you know, other ways that would feel like you're kind of part of a larger campaign. But honestly, before we invest money in that, it would be great to know if that was actually something that would be motivational to attorneys or not. So this is another part of the campaign where we're kind of building it as we go. And I would love, love, love feedback on things like this kind of recognition, if that would be of any interest to folks. But for sure, the gala, Zoom gala, I'm going to go with that right now.
You know, I always like, we have the, and I apologize, I don't remember if it's MSBA or HCB. I think it's the MSBA North Star lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Yeah. I always, you know, like the, you know, kind of listing and getting to see the other people that have also gone through and done a lot of volunteer work. I think that's kind of nice. I will say, just to in case you decide just to copy and paste that one, my biggest complaint with the North Star lawyers is I get asked probably 25 times a year if I've signed up, and I never remember if I've, you know, listed my pro bono hours for the year. So an ongoing list as people sign up, as they list their pro bono hours. Hey, it's updated. You can just check and see if your name's already on the list. Very nice. I know I've already talked to MSBA staff about that.
Sherri's
Yeah,
taking a
That
note.
would be helpful for the reporting, for sure.
For the what?
The reporting, under the new
yeah.
rule,
Yeah, you
which
can
is
go back and check.
approximate hours. So you don't have to be as precise as you are when billing private clients.
Yeah, the North Star program, as many of you know, recognizes lawyers who do 50 or more pro bono hours in a calendar year. The Lawyer Step Up for Minnesota program will not have that an hourly requirement. You do need to do something more than step up or sign up, but you know, the programs will be keeping a list of who signs up and who does volunteer work for them, and sharing that in anticipation of the Zoom gala.
Yeah, and the other thing to say, and this is on an MSBA webinar, but if you were sharing with friends or others, the difference between this and North Star is that you don't need to be an MSBA member to receive recognition. So for this, it's any lawyer who participates. So.
And Sherri and Bridget, you were talking about what motivates people, and it's interesting. I obviously have talked about my extensive pro bono work. I'm always above 50 hours a year. I generally don't do the North Star, not because it's not a great program. I think more people should be talking about the pro bono they do. It'll encourage other people to do it, just because I feel like when we have so many things in our lives and it's like, put your name here to sign up for, you know, a recognition. I'm like, oh, I don't need the recognition, but I recognize I should do it because it will signal to other people that I value it, and maybe they should value it too. So this year I did do it this year, but in years past, I just haven't prioritized it because I felt like I didn't need the external validation. But I think perhaps messaging, you know, it's not just you bragging about the pro bono work you do, it's communicating the importance that you see in it to people to encourage them. Then I would do it, which is, again, what I told myself when I did sign up this year.
No, I think that's a really good point. And again, it's, you know, a lot of the things we do to encourage pro bono are not going to hit everybody exactly right. We have to take, you know, many tools in the toolbox approach. I mean, I think about the CLE for pro bono rule. You know, if you do 6 hours of pro bono work through an approved legal services provider, you can get 1 CLE credit. And we know that that is a really underutilized rule because people, you know, just they have their CLEs through other methods. And so they don't use that particular way to meet their CLE requirements. And so if you look at who's actually, you know, the number of people who request CLE credit, we know it's much lower. And that's okay. I mean, it's we really have to take many tools in the toolbox to you know, if one approach helped get 10% more people, it would really make a huge difference to that many more clients. So, there's not one size fits all in this at all. And so we're always looking for kind of the new way that will hit a few more people, and really encourage them to participate.
And one way that might be, kind of to Rachel's point is, she doesn't need the recognition. Everybody knows that she is an amazing volunteer, and it's true. One of the ways that I wonder about giving that additional recognition is, maybe as opposed to just the individual's name, the name and where they do the majority, or what organization they value doing the volunteer work. For example, I do a lot of volunteer work with the Minnesota Teen Challenge. It's not the majority of my volunteer hours, but I'd love for them to get more recognition. And so I'd put my name down and Minnesota Teen Challenge next to that to give them the additional recognition.
Landon, that absolutely resonates with me 100%. If I'm allowed to list my favorite places to volunteer for, I'm all over it. Exactly.
Maybe something the courts and MSBA can take on board to modify both recognition programs.
Yeah, I mean, the Lawyers Step Up is going to be a more limited group, but I love the idea of having ways to recognize the places that are, the programs and therefore the clients that are being impacted. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I really like that. And
I do too. Yeah.
I think
that also gives feedback as to where people, where it's been good. Hey, I know Joe, he does a lot of volunteer work. He enjoys it. Oh, he volunteers there. Okay. Yeah, I'll give him a shot. I hadn't thought about that. I think that's a benefit too.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
again, we just really want the focus to be on volunteering that you're using your law license. I think that is part of the educational campaign that will go into the pro bono reporting as well, is that I think there's some confusion sometimes about when you're volunteering, doing really important stuff, I have no doubt, but not in a way that is pro bono representation that requires your law license. And so I think we just, as lawyers, again, going back to my monopoly argument, we're really trying to focus on people getting access to legal services they couldn't otherwise get. So just throwing that out there.
And one of the discussions regarding pro bono is it's not just using your law license, but it's also who you're serving. So if your neighbor comes up to you and you offer to take the case for free, depending on your neighbor's income, that may very well not be pro bono work.
Right.
Landon, I was the pro bono coordinator at my firm for many years, and I'm still on the pro bono committee. And one of my roles in that was to police what would be pro bono. And it's like, nope, your divorce is not pro bono. No, it's not. I'm sorry.
I want to be really mindful of our panelists' time. I know some of them have meetings on their calendars that they have to go to soon. So this has been a really great discussion. I thank Justice Chutich, Bridget, Rachel for participating today. Landon, you asked really good questions that I think we all think about, and it's good to talk about more in the public forum. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. And I don't know if you, Landon or Mike, have any closing comments.
Mike, what do we have coming up next?
Up next, we have Dean Anthony Nidwicki. So we're back on May 6th with our next business as usual. We're going to talk about Mitchell Hamlin's anti-racist pledge. And if I can cajole one of the ABA delegates to join us, we might have a discussion about whether the Mitchell Hamlin style anti-racist pledge ought to be a requirement for ABA law school accreditation, sort of the conceit of our next program. So we'll see how that goes. But Dean Anthony Nidwicki, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back on May 6th. Thanks to Taft for their sponsorship of the program, and we'll see you all next time.